Hello and welcome to another edition of Saint Spotlight. Today we are joined by Abby Hightchew, a senior here at Thomas More University and SGA president, and among many other things. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Abby.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So starting off, can you share your experience of how you found Thomas More and knew it was the right place for you?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to go somewhere kind of in the local area. I live in Walton, Kentucky, so mainly it was going to be places like Cincinnati and then northern Kentucky. So I toured a few different places. I originally wanted to go to the University of Cumberland, but after I toured Thomas More, I felt like it was going to be the best kind of area for me. And then they, along with the scholarships that were offered, I thought with it being just 35 minutes from home that it would be nice for me to be able to work where I had been working, and then still be able to be close to family. So that's kind of what I chose, Thomas More. There's a lot of other reasons now that I've chosen Thomas More, but initially that was kind of my first jump into it.
Mm-hmm. And how has your journey been from student to president of the Student Government Association here at Thomas More?
So it's been great. I've absolutely loved my time in SGA. I started off as the vice president of programming with SGA, so I was doing things like planning our community outreach programs and then overseeing our banquets and things like that. And I really fell in love with it from that first point. And originally Charles Delp was kind of my mentor in that, and I really loved him and being able to work with him. And he was the one that was kind of like, you should run for president. And I was like, interesting thought, no. And then after a little bit of convincing on his part, I decided it would be something that I should do. So, but it's been great. I've absolutely loved it. I love the impact that we're able to make on students and also the faculty that are here and like outside organizations, like charities that we've, worked with and stuff like that.
Certainly. What has been your favorite SGA event or initiative?
So it's probably a close tie between Winter Wonderland and then we did a Pie Your Professor event for breast cancer awareness. So we donated all of the proceeds to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, and that was really awesome. I think that was one of my favorite events so far, but Winter Wonderland is also really awesome because you get to kind of have a bunch of kids from the community come out, and then they get to like do a bunch of different crafts with the student presidents and things that we have in clubs that are on campus. So it gives really a good opportunity for Thomas More to express, the students that we have here and be able to work with the community. So those are probably my top two.
I certainly remember Winter Wonderland being a hit. I thought it was so fun, at the same time crazy to see like mules and donkeys right outside President Chill's office like a few years ago, just to see how much you guys transformed the Saint Center for things like that. So that is certainly the accomplishment. And speaking of which, what accomplishment are you most proud of as president of SGA?
So one of my most the things that I look back on most is the survey that we actually recently launched. So it was actually the largest responded survey that we've had so far at Thomas More. So we had, I think, about 280 responses altogether, just getting students' feedbacks on things that we had heard like majoritized complaints on. And so now being able to like advocate for the students and have their voice in a data form is really great, and being able to present that to like the proper committees and people at school is really awesome. So I would say just student advocation and being able to promote that and voice their opinions.
Certainly, I'm sure over your years you've seen a lot of things go both the right way and the wrong way, and it's nice to be able to take that data and grow from it. And speaking of seeing a lot, one thing that kind of we both have in common among a small but at the same time a large handful of people at Thomas More have is we are both CCU, Cincinnati Christian refugees, as I sometimes call it. How was that journey from your time in Price Hill as a student at Cincinnati Christian to the chaos that unfolded afterwards, and then running right into almost COVID, like 3 months later?
Yeah, so it was a lot all at once. I have to say I really enjoyed my time at CCU, and I think that there were certain things about CCU that were so abnormal for colleges now, like the community that CCU had, and the just like one of my favorite things that they had was Snake Day, and just the like seeing how people were brought together, even like professors and students, I think was just an awesome experience. I had also done like so weird because I hate any science classes, but I did a like a geology class at Thomas More, and we did like a field trip for our lab, and it was a 3-day field trip to I think it was Cumberland Falls or something like that. And that was one of the most fun like camping field trips that I've ever done. And being able to like get really close with those students was just an awesome experience. So I loved CCU, and I was so sad to see it go. And I think there's a lot of hard feelings now for people because they lost their accreditation, and moving forward through that, I think people see that that was like a leadership issue in the school. But I really loved it, and I think that like I dual enrolled there, so I was really young when I went there, and it gave me a very false impression of how close people were going to be in college. But yeah, so that's, and then the transition to COVID, it was just kind of crazy, but I think it's something that like I didn't know any differently. I didn't know graduating differently. I didn't know being a senior differently, and so it was something that didn't really seem like too much of a like, wow, I feel like I'm being ripped apart for not having my graduation. But yeah, I really did feel like all of those experiences made me part of who I am today. So very thankful for them.
Yes, it certainly allowed us to at least grow from what we went through in that time period. And for better or worse, I'm happy that it happened because it was allowing to send people like you out into the community, like here at Thomas More, and people who were not displaced, but were, I guess, forced to go out and spread their talent and their knowledge in other places than just in Cincinnati. And even some professors at Thomas More, like I know Professor Jillian Young in the psychology department. I still see her time to time in the hallway, and I'm always so happy because she was my first college class freshman year, and
That's cool.
I get to see her from time to time still teaching classes here, and a small handful of overlap. And I think even your brother noticed me the other day sitting with like a CCU sticker on my laptop. So it's a nice little like club that we all have been forced into, but very much are able to have those similarities with.
For sure.
And speaking of inspiration, who or what do you draw inspiration from?
So I always think that this is an interesting question. I feel like a lot of people answer this so differently than I do. But I think my inspiration comes, like, each quality that I have and each, like, motivative factor that I have, I think I've gotten from different people. Like, I would say, like, my perseverance comes, like, firstly from my grandmother. Just the, like, example that she had set for me was fantastic. And, like, she ended up passing away because of pancreatic cancer, but she was such a role model in my life and so important to me. But then I think, like, my, like, courageousness and, like, the fact that I'm such an overachiever is due to my father. I think the fact that I'm a very argumentative person, so anytime I kind of go into a conversation and somebody says something that I disagree with, I'm very open about, like, wait, why would you say that? And I get into a debate automatically, and that's because of my mom. I used to fight her a lot, and she used to go through quite a lot because I was such a, like, debative child. But I think that served me very well in the long run, and not being able to just, like, accept something that somebody says that I disagree with. But I think those are really 3 big people that have inspired me to be who I am. And then just the fact that, like, as far as the legal career, I really don't have an inspiration. I think, like, that's something that I sort of took on my own because of my personality. I really like watching female lawyers that get out there because I think there's a lot of underrepresentation of female lawyers. So seeing, like, Camille Vasquez, I'm sure you saw her everywhere. So it was very awesome to see, like, a female lawyer get out there on, like, a worldwide stage. But people like that are also a big inspiration for me.
Certainly, and it definitely sounds like you have cultivated a good repertoire of the best attributes from those around you, and you make it into your own. And it is you need that as a lawyer, and you need that as a strong person. So it's good that you've been able to grow into that. What are your plans and goals for after graduation from Thomas More?
Yeah, so I think I will probably be taking a gap year just to work and save up for law school, but in 2024 I do plan to go to law school. I specifically like medical malpractice law, so working on the plaintiff side of that is something that I really enjoyed researching and doing stuff like that for. Obviously, I haven't practiced any cases or anything like that, but it's so weird because when people ask me that question, there's so many different like fields of law that I'm interested in, and like so many different areas that I like hope to someday like dabble in. And I think that going to law school will be a great step for me to just kind of figure out what's going to be best. But I've done a numerous amount of legal internships, and every single one I found something that I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, because law is just such a big field. But that's definitely my plan. And then after I graduate law school, I'd love to work for a firm and kind of get started in that corporate realm. And maybe one day I would love to be a judge. I love that side of things too. So interning for a judge has also kind of opened me up to that. But that's what my plans are so far. So
I'm sure they will be as grand as you hope them to be. And then lastly, what advice do you have for Thomas More students?
I think my biggest piece of advice, especially for like people that are my age or a little bit older or a little bit younger, is just be outgoing. And it's one of the things that I think is really hard for people now, in the age that we've grown up in, where you've been able to just text somebody or DM somebody when you have a question. I think being outgoing is very different from just like seeing somebody in person and talking to them. I think it's talking to people and reaching out to people and being the first kind of aspect of communication with people that you haven't met before. So whether it be somebody that you really admire and you're like, I would love to learn from you. I would love to meet you and go to coffee. When I lived in Washington, D.C., that's something that I did quite often. Even if like I didn't think that they were going to respond in any aspect. When I was there, I looked up like 10 of the top lawyers in Washington, D.C., and I emailed multiple of them just to kind of see like who would respond if anybody would want to go to coffee. And I actually got responses from at least 4 of them. And these are people that are like millionaires and are like worldly, recognized, and that actually respond to people, because there's not many people that actually reach out and take that first step. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just, even when you think somebody may not respond or it might be weird, be willing to be that weird person that reaches out or goes up to somebody at the end of a speech or conference and is like, hey, I want to talk. Give me your card. Have your own business card, too. That's really important. That's always super impactful to people.
It is. It's although one might look at it weird, the other might look at it as success, and that first step is what puts you apart from those back in line. So thank you very much for sharing your advice and your story here today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all back home for watching another edition of Saint Spotlights. Be sure to stay tuned for our next edition, and have a good one.